All right, good evening, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. Christy, roll call, please.
John?
Here.
Melanie?
Here.
Jake?
Here.
Linda?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Jake, will you lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I approve a publication in front of me. Next is visitors' correspondence. Anyone desiring to speak on any item or issue not on the agenda or any item on the agenda that does not include a public hearing may do so, but shall be limited to 3 minutes. Persons should identify themselves by name and address. Person speaking should not expect the council to engage in back and forth dialogue regarding their comments. Unless an agenda item includes a public hearing, no person may speak during the business portion of the meeting, provided, however, persons speaking during a public hearing are limited to between 5 and 20 minutes. The public advised that a copy of the Open Meetings Act is located on the north wall of the council chambers. One copy of all reproducible written material to be discussed at this meeting is available for examination or copying. So any visitors or correspondents that would like to speak today? Okay, need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
vote please. All in favor? All right, number 7, resolution number 2025-05, consideration and action to direct the sale, the manner, and terms of the sale of certain personal property owned by the City of Valley, namely a Belgian Malinois canine, Officer Canine Sonic. Is there any discussion before I move for a motion to approve? Okay.
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
In protecting the city, are we looking at limiting the commercial use of Sonic on a go-forward basis as a council? So he could not be commercially used, correct?
Right.
So he will not go back into service?
That's correct.
Yeah.
He's retired.
Yeah, he's just like retired and that's a pet.
Okay, so no commercial use would be something we would want to stipulate in the agreement, I would assume? And then, I assume that you have visited Mr. Deemer's home, where Canine Sonic will be housed, is that correct?
I am not.
No.
I have not visited the home. I
Okay.
visited the canine trainer unit to see where he was housed.
Okay. So I think we should also include some sort of liability clause that limits our liability for turning over an animal that is formally trained as a bite dog. So would we be willing to put that in the non-commercial agreement as well?
I would like to counter that. How many people at this table went to Ed Van Buren's property to visit where Sonic was during his time and after his time?
I'm just saying.
No, just to counter. Did anyone go to Ed Van Buren's property where he was at?
No.
No, but we've learned lessons
I don't
from
think so.
that, I
Yeah.
believe, which is
So-
why he's saying
Yeah,
that.
trying to be wise about where we're putting it off.
I think that Deemer has been actually the only handler on paper, right? His dog hasn't been certified since 2023. So essentially, the only handler that's ever been certified for him is Deemer. He trained that dog. He did not come pre-trained. He raised that dog. I know that that dog has a seat at the table. I've seen photos. He has an actual chair at the kitchen table. I am okay with not having that added.
Okay, I think we do have to have some sort of waiver of liability for the city's sake. Jesus Christ. That simply makes sense to me.
I don't see that being a problem.
Okay, great.
Can I make a comment?
No, our visitor correspondence section has been closed.
Of course it is.
I don't foresee this coming back on us.
I would just note from a legal standpoint, John's point is that he is a trained by the dog, and if something were to happen down the line, not anything to do with his living conditions at Officer Deemer's house, but if something were to happen down the line with this dog, the city could have some liability for what eventual injuries or whatever could happen down the line. That's John's point.
What is
So-
what are those, what would those situations be?
If he were to, and I don't know, I mean, this is all hypothetical, but if he were,
Hypothetical.
this is a hypothetical, and it's my job as the city attorney to protect the city from future liability, okay? If that bite trained,
No comments from the audience, please.
if that bite trained dog were to go on and hurt somebody down the line, there is a chance that some of that liability could fall back on the city. That is what John's concerned about. So his proposal is an
No comments from the audience. If there's other comments, you will be asked to leave.
Proposal is an indemnification agreement that basically just says that the city, that Officer Deemer will in fact indemnify the city against any potential liability should something happen down the line.
So
That's his proposal,
if we sell the dog, we no longer own it, correct?
correct?
Okay. So he will then be the owner of the dogs, correct?
Correct.
So anything that happens under his authority, he would be liable for,
Not
correct?
necessarily. Any potential plaintiff could come back on the city.
Even though it's not a property of ours.
Correct.
So this is a common piece in a number of different agreements whenever you're transferring property. And it just seems to make sense to transfer this with all the protections the city would deserve. And I think Mr. Deemer would be willing to sign off on something like that. So I think that's something we should ask for.
I believe that he would take all responsibility for this dog, so
Says this.
whatever you need to do.
Is that, so would that take any extra time for getting the dog?
No, it would just, when we were to make the transfer contemplated by this resolution, when we would make the transfer on February 7th, there would be a written agreement that would cover both the non-commercial use and an indemnification provision that would require Officer Deemer to indemnify the city should something happen down the line. And in the city's best, it is in the city's best interest to have that layer of protection. But no, to your question, it wouldn't delay this.
That's all the questions I had for council.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, I would entertain a motion. Did you have something, Jake?
So what are the, before I approve it, are we just approving what's on the resolution right here, right now? On the agenda?
Yeah, and I believe John's addition that was discussed was the no commercial use. So it would be
Okay.
subject to that provision.
So that's something new that will be added on to the resolution?
We will pass the resolution as written, subject to the
Okay.
requirement that there's a no commercial use.
And
Okay.
and indemnification.
That's your motion.
Yep.
Okay. John, then you have motion to approve resolution 2025-05.
I have motion to amend
Okay.
the motion. Someone else can make the motion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Would anyone like to approve resolution 2025-05 with the considerations that John has asked to amend?
So moved.
Vote, please. 3 in favor, 1 against. At this time, I will be exercising my right to veto the resolution based on the following. State statute and municipal code regarding selling or conveying city property with a fair market value over $5,000 can be interpreted multiple ways. I believe the city should follow legal advice and err on the side of caution in these types of instances to reduce liability. In addition, police canine experts have evaluated and indicated Sonnet continues to be fit for narcotics duty. In addition, Code 2 canine owner Ed Van Buren has stated that Sonnet was bred and trained to work, and little could help his stress other than putting him back to work. Therefore, I'm unsure if retiring and taking away Sonic's ability to work is in the best interest of the dog. Andrea, do you want to discuss what happens now?
Yes, so as the mayor has vetoed, it now goes back to the council. The resolution now goes back to the council. The council can override the mayor's veto with a 2/3 majority vote. So we will now take that to.
I make a motion to override the veto.
And second?
Vote, please. 3 in favor, 1 against. Thank you. All right, number 8, we have appointment of city officers, discussion regarding council authority over appointment and termination of city officers. Dave, Blake?
Yes. Good evening. I was retained by the mayor to give an independent legal opinion as to the appropriateness of the city council terminating existing city officers. I have issued that opinion. I think it went out finally yesterday. Basically, the bottom line is that this city and this council is governed by state statute and has no powers beyond that. The state statutes are strictly construed, so if there's any ambiguity with regard to those, the interpretation will be against having any such power. And the state statute regarding removal of officers of a city of this class says such officers may be removed from office by the mayor with the consent of the city council. Thus, the mayor has to initiate any type of removal of any city officers. If it is done in any other way, it would be illegal. Ultra virus is the nice legal term we use for it, and in my opinion would subject the city to potential liability. You've got to follow the statute. If you don't like the statute, there's this really big building down in Lincoln that you can go down to and talk to those people. But as it exists now, that's what we have. I will comment that I understand also that there's been some suggestion with regard to the chief of police. As a couple of us here have been through this process before, there's a special provision removing any police officer, and that has to be done specifically pursuant to a procedure. The procedure is initiated by a written accusation, and if it doesn't come from the mayor, then it is to be removed by the mayor. The city council does not have any role in removal of a police officer unless and until there would be an appeal. So the simple answer is, and I put everything in the particular letter, that the city council simply at this particular stage has no role in removing existing officers. I would also mention, I did not put in the letter, that I have spent now 20 doing employment discrimination law. And in case nobody's noticed, Mr. Gales and Chief Martinez are minorities. And if they were to bring a discrimination action, and I also understand through the rumor mill, they both have attorneys, and at least Police Chief Martinez has mentioned the possibility of discrimination. In order to make a prima facie case for discrimination under the law, you need two things. One, I'm a minority. Two, a bad thing happened to me. That's all you have to prove to get in the court door. Then, the person or entity firing has to come up with a non-discriminatory reason why that was done. I always tell my clients that if you can't articulate that reason in one sentence, when you get in front of the 12 people down in federal court, you might as well get the checkbook out. The next step then is to prove that that reason is a pretext, and that can go a long way. If you say they committed an error, then we go into everybody in the city who committed an error and wasn't fired. If they say they've issued bad language, we go and look at everybody in the city that has had bad language and not been fired. And that establishes that the reason could possibly be pretext. There's also another type of discrimination that may come into play, and that is if you look at the statistics for Douglas County as to the ratio of minorities, and you look at the statistics in the city of Valley for minorities serving, if you remove Martinez and Mr. Gale, you're not meeting the ratio that they would look at to see if you're discriminating. So the basic answer is there's no authority for the city council to remove these officials. They already have a job, and they're entitled to continue that unless and until, with regard to anyone other than the chief of police, that the mayor initiates removal. And with regard to the chief of police, there's an accusation that goes through the process. Questions?
I have a few questions. Thank you for being here, David. Who is your primary client in this matter? The mayor, the city of Valley, or someone else?
The mayor. I was engaged by the mayor to issue an opinion.
Okay. Who is paying for your services? Is it the city or the mayor's personal funds?
It would not be the mayor's personal funds, is my understanding.
Thank you. What are your ethical obligations regarding confidentiality and disclosure when working with the mayor and council members?
At this point, the mayor has said I am entitled to speak to this body without any restrictions. Up until that point, I would be bound with my attorney-client privilege with regard to the mayor.
Why do you feel it was necessary to ask the mayor permission to speak with me, a council member, regarding a city matter?
Because I was engaged by the mayor, and at that particular point, I did not know if I was going any further, whether the opinion I issued would be public or not. And until that determination was made and I was told I was going to be appearing here, she was my sole client.
If you are retained by the city, why are council members not given direct access to consult with you regarding legal questions relevant to our governance?
I wasn't retained by the city.
You're paid by the city?
I was retained by, there's a distinction that you have to keep in mind with regard to who you're retained by and who you're paid for. It's a common thing with regard to insurance policies, if some of these members have an accident, that the insurance company will hire an attorney. They represent the insured, but they're paid by the insurance company. You don't follow the dollars. What you follow is the ethical obligation. And the obligation was I was retained by the mayor to issue an unbiased opinion. That's what I did.
Yeah, on the flip side of that, we all need to be good stewards of our money. As we all know, it costs $1 per hour amount every time we discuss with our attorney. So we have the processes that things go through our administrator and through the right channels to ensure that not everybody can call the people that are very expensive and paid on the staff. And so if we all know that the process is to go through Cameron for everything. If he cannot answer the question, he will forward it on to the people that need to, without making sure we're not unnecessarily costing the taxpayers a very high fee per hour.
Thank you. Do you see any potential conflict of interest in representing the mayor while also advising the city? How do you mitigate this?
I am giving a straightforward opinion as to what the law is. This is not a case in which I am writing a brief in which I am putting forth a legal opinion that I am trying to sway towards one side. This is where I've been asked to look at the law and render to the best of my ability an opinion as to what the law is and what the consequences is. And any insinuation that I am going towards the mayor on this or to anybody else impinges my ethics, and I will not stand for that. I am ethically bound to issue in this particular case an opinion to the best of my ability. I worked for the Chief Justice of the Nebraska Supreme Court. If I disagreed with him, I told him so. I always give an honest opinion. I've done so for clients, insurance companies, the judicial system in this state, and it has nothing to do with whom I'm hired with.
Do you believe the city council should have independent legal counsel to ensure our interests and concerns are properly addressed?
They should be the same interests and concerns, but if you want to retain counsel, you can always retain counsel. You always have the right to pay for that out of your pocket.
In your professional opinion, is it normal for a city attorney retained by the city to prioritize the mayor over the council in terms of communication and decision making?
I am not involved in city government. I don't do anything with regard to city government. My sole role with regard to Valley is when called with regard to employment issues. At the request of the mayor, I will come in. I am not a city attorney. I do not know municipal law, and I don't know how that balance would come out.
Why was I directed to consult with you by another city attorney, Jeff Farnham, that if you ultimately defer all your communications to the mayor?
I don't know that that was the case. If it was the case and Mr. Farnham asked me, I would have told him that I thought it was inappropriate.
So how would you respond to the public concerns about potential bias or lack of transparency in your role?
I just answered that question.
Okay, well,
And they were upset that I got angry over that. But that is my integrity and that's all I've got. And
Okay.
you start impinging upon that, we're going down a big road.
I'd like to move on to the questions I actually wanted to ask you when I originally emailed you. Does the introductory period outlined in the personnel manual grant the council flexibility to not consent to appointments without exposing the city to the liability? And I have them here for you if you need them.
No, I've read those. The answer is that the state statute cannot be overruled by anything in the personnel manual. The state statute, to the extent there's inconsistency, the personnel manual would fall. There's also no evidence with regard to the people that I think you're talking about that they were ever imposed on a probationary period. I've seen nothing that does that. So it's a hypothetical question as to whether you could create a probationary period and then get around the statute. There's nothing with regard to city officials other than the chief of police or police officers that makes any mention of probation. I will also mention that the way that the personnel manual is currently written, that the city of Valley has waived its right to at-will employment. Persons can only be discharged for specific causes in that personnel manual.
Thank you. According to the Nebraska Revised Statute 19-18355, for positions subject to the Civil Service Act, an appointment is not considered complete until after a probationary period, during which the appointing authority may terminate employment if the individual is deemed unfit or unsatisfactory. That's from the nebraskalegislator.gov. Can you confirm that the city administrator and police chief are currently within their introductory periods as defined by our personnel manual and state law?
No, they're not, and they're not civil servants defined by that particular statute.
The city council holds the authority to consent or to withhold consent for mayor appointments. Does the council have the legal right to withhold consent for appointments during the introductory period without exposing the city to legal liability?
I don't understand the question. It
Does the
rolled back
council
on
have-
itself.
Does the council have the legal right to withhold consent for appointments?
If an appointment is made pursuant to the statute, yes, it has nothing to do with a probationary period. The state statute provides that the mayor, with consent of the city council, may appoint such officers as shall be required by ordinance and otherwise required by law. So if the mayor appoints, then the city council may give consent.
And they are not part of the introductory period at all? They're not part of this part at all?
No.
It doesn't exclude them in this writing, in black and white.
You have to understand that the particular provision of 17 governs cities of the second class. The more specific statute will always rule over any other statute, and that particular provision, they are not civil servants. If you want to open that up and admit that they're civil servants, admit on the other side that they have certain bargaining rights that you've not been giving them.
Can you define a civil servant for me?
I'm not, the civil servant pursuant to the statute, I don't have the definition in front of me. I think it's in section 101, isn't it?
Would it be someone that's paid by tax dollars?
Well, that's one of the qualifications, but that's not how you get under that statute.
So what would all qualify as a civil servant?
Those that qualify under that statute and its terms. Now, I don't have section 19 specifically memorized with regard to that.
Because I thought when you swear in as a chief of police or an administrator, isn't part of their verbiage that they promise to act towards their civil duties faithfully and correctly?
Well, that's pretty broad. They also, I think, want to uphold the Constitution of the United States and do other items. It does not say that when they say that they're going to uphold that they're upholding a particular statute that doesn't apply.
According to Nebraska Rule of Professional Conduct 3-501.7, a concurrent conflict of interest exists if the representation of one client will be directly adverse to another client. That's from the Supreme Court.nebraska.gov. Given that the city attorney provides legal counsel to both the mayor and the city council, how does a city attorney manage potential conflicts of interest, especially when disagreements arise between these parties?
As I stated, I am not a municipal attorney and know how that is handled. I will tell you
that if you're giving your honest opinion, there is never a conflict of interest. Where that comes back is if you're setting forth a position that you want the city attorney to take, and somebody else is stating a position on the other side. It doesn't have anything to do with the fact that the city attorney is giving unbiased advice.
What specific legal risk or liabilities could the city face if the council decides to withhold consent for these appointments during their introductory periods?
The question first is wrong because that's not the status that we're in. So we can make up things like saying, what risk does the city council have if they pull out a gun today and shoot Gales? It doesn't have anything to do with what's going on. The risk if you fire Mr. Gales or Martinez is that you will be sued. You will have violated due process because you've gone outside the specified procedures. You will have set up a discrimination action, which will involve not only the potential for liability, but to pay the attorney's fees on the other side of that, so that you end up paying counsel on both sides. That is the risk. You also could be ordered to reemploy the individuals with back pay.
Define this, you got it.
Do we have a legal contract with anyone right now?
You have a contract specifically to the fact that, and it would be a legal contract, because at this particular point they have been appointed, there is nothing that would allow them to be removed, so they have a potential contract that it exists until the mayor decides to remove them, or the mayor leaves office and then someone else takes a new term.
Can you just talk a little bit about why would a council have to consent to a mayor's appointments on an annual basis if potentially the answer was ever no, could be illegal? Why would we subject ourselves to that type of liability?
I don't know why that procedure was undertaken. It's not necessary.
Thank you. I have no more questions.
Anybody else?
All right, thanks, Dave. Just a couple comments I have regarding this as well. I do appreciate the opportunity we had to review the code section to make sure we're following the right processes, because you're right, Melanie, we determined we weren't. We did not need to do this process annually. Once the appointments were done the first time I'm the mayor, the appointments are good until I'm no longer the mayor. I would like to point out, though, this has definitely caused a significant impact to our community as a whole by decreasing the morale, productivity, and well-being of our employees. Employees have been faced with very unnecessary uncertainty of continued employment and also forced to take their focus off the strategic goals of the city. To you employees that are here and those of you that might be watching, I know I've talked to you all individually, but I just want to thank you all for your dedication, and I'm sorry that we have been going through this the last couple of months. I continue to trust you will all do your jobs to the best of your ability, which will include making mistakes, and we're all going to learn from that. So going forward, we will continue to follow the established legal disciplinary processes if issues arise. So thank you.
I do have a question. Can the council make an agenda item next week to hire our own legal counsel?
We will take that offline because there's nothing else on the agenda. We will follow the right process to request agenda items. So, but entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay.
Vote, please. All in favor? Thank you.
Check this shit out. It's like I figured. What do you suppose I get?
They're basically good until she's not.
I'll ask them. Well, I'll take up my agenda.
So Jim can't come quick enough, right, for everybody? Well, technically.
Get the mayor to talk.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Bye, Deb. See you later.
Thank you.